Okay, welcome back everyone. In the last video, we tried to create a network. So basically we were able to up the network and we were able to down the network, right? So basically you can start the network and you can destroy the network by deleting all the containers. So what we did is we were able to use this configuration file, which is Docker Compose, where you have all the required configuration to start the containers, right? So we have Docker up and running, and we can, when we start, we'll make sure that we down the network first and then we'll up it. Now, when you down the network, what you do is you remove all the existing containers and then you remove the volumes as well. So everything will start fresh. Okay, and then based on what you want to do, if it is up or create or down, you will call a particular function. So let's say if you call up, in this case, you are saying network up, where you are able to generate the configuration. Basically, this is where you generate the certificates for the peers, for the orderers, for the all the entities on the network, and then you are basically doing up for all the containers. Simple stuff, right? Now the only thing is, when you up the network, and what if, in fact, we have certificates. If certificates are there, we don't have to generate every time, right? That's the only thing. So maybe we will check that later. What if you have the certificates? Do you want to recreate every time? So we can apply the condition there, if and else. In fact, if you get the exact script from the official documentation, it has everything. So even if we don't do it, you can refer that from the official documentation, what I'm talking about. Okay, so there's if and else as well. But just to keep it simple, we'll try to keep it as less lines as possible, because when you have less number of lines, you have less things to worry about, right? And things are much simpler. Okay, now what I will do is I want to focus on create channel, because now the network is up and in fact, let's try that. So let me just run this code and we'll make sure that the network is down. Command not found. And yeah, so I'm down, making sure the network is down. Okay, it looks like all the volumes have also been removed, and let me just up the network just to see if this is working, or maybe we will up it once we want to create a channel. So basically what we want is, once you start a network, of course you want the organization to interact, right? So when you have multiple organizations to interact, we need to create something called a consortium. Now we can have multiple organizations, let's say 5 organizations, and maybe you don't want all the organization to share data. Maybe there are 2 organizations, they want to share data. So what they will do is they will create a consortium here. Now in our example, we only have 2 organizations. So those are 2 organizations who will be creating a consortium. And if they want to communicate, we will be using something called a channel creation, right? So if a user says, hey, I want to create a channel, then we have to do certain things, right? Now this is a lengthy process, so just be with me. There are so many steps you have to follow. And again, all these things are only one-time work, right? You don't have to do that for every time you want to run the network. All this configuration you will be doing at once for the entire project. And then, yes, of course, if you want to customize, that's where you will do configuration. Otherwise, just create chain code, deploy the chain code, and you're done. So whatever we are doing now, it's a one-time thing, okay? So just stay with me. It will be a bit difficult initially, but let's try to understand. Okay, now when you say you want to create a channel, what exactly we do? So in every channel, we will be having something called a Genesis block. Now this is a block which will be the first block of the blockchain, right? Now if you know about the public blockchain, right, we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, and whatever public blockchain you have, the entire blockchain, the first block of the blockchain will be it will have some information about the network, right? It will have some configuration. Now for the Bitcoin network, for the Ethereum network, you only have one Genesis block, of course, right? Because that's one big blockchain. But when it comes to private blockchain, every channel will have a different blockchain, right? So let's say in one network you have 5 consortiums. Every consortium will have, let's say, their own channel. In this way, every channel will have one Genesis block. So in total, we have 5 channels, 5 Genesis block. So point to remember, if you want to create a channel, the first thing is you have to create a Genesis block. The next thing we have to do is we need to create a channel, right? So we'll create a channel here. The next step is, once you create a channel, you have to make sure that all the peers, they join the channel, right? So they have to make sure that you have to join your peers. In fact, remember when we ran this for the first time, we were able to create peers and orderers. So we have to add them to this channel. And also there's one important step, which maybe we will not do in this video, but we have to set the anchor peers. Now every organization will have an anchor peer with them, right? So we have to set the anchor peer for every organization. So these are the 4 steps you have to do. That's a simple thing, right? Looks like it, but we have like this step. So in this video, we'll try to create Genesis block. We'll try to create a channel. We'll try to join the peers to the channel. And maybe if we get enough time, we'll also do this at anchor. So make sure that in your notes you have this 4 steps, or maybe I will just keep it there. Okay, so the first step is you need to create a Genesis block. Okay, how do we do this? And do we want to do everything in this function? We can, okay, we can write all the steps in this particular function. The only problem is it's better to segregate stuff, right? Channel creation has multiple steps. We can create a separate script for it. Maybe you can reuse later, right? That's the thing. So maybe, when you have multiple script, we can create a separate folder and we can name that folder as script. Okay, we already have a script folder, right? Let's use that. We already have a script folder. So in this script folder, let me create a file and let me call this file as create channel.sh. Now this is a file I'll be using, right, for all the thing. So in this function, which is create channel, we just have to do one thing, right? If you want to do all these things, we'll do in one step, which is calling that particular script. So we'll say scripts / create channel.sh. That's the file name, right? And one more thing, whenever you create a channel, you define one more thing, the channel name. This is something you can ask from the user, or maybe, I can simply mention the channel name here itself. I can say my channel. That's your choice. You can define my channel, or maybe you can ask the user. So I will ask the user to get the input, right? So when you ask the user, if user is passing this, let me just use init itself, and yeah, this is where. So basically user will pass two things, right? A user will pass the sub command that you want to execute up or create channel. Maybe user will also pass a second parameter. We'll name this as channel name equal to $2, right? So we got channel name as well. And we'll use the same channel name here. So we'll mention the channel name here. That's it. Anything else? That's it. This is the thing we have to do, right? Simple stuff, but hold on. The entire file here is empty, right? So all these steps which we mentioned here actually goes in this file. This is where you have to do this. Oh, it's not. What went wrong? Cut and paste. Done. So these are the steps you have to follow, right? And let's get started. So the first thing is when you call this particular script, you're passing the channel name as well. So let's save that channel name here, and we are getting this channel name from the $1, right? Do we need that? No, my bad. Okay. Now, when you create a channel, there are certain more variables which we'll be using, right? So there are delay as well, which specifies the delay between the channel creation. So we'll say this is. You can set default values to it. I will say 3. Maybe you can customize later. You can pass these values. Then maximum amount of retry creating or joining the peer. We'll say try max 5 times. And yeah, that's it. Okay, let's try to use these variables. Now, once you have this, the next thing is whenever you create a Genesis block, we are saying we'll be creating a Genesis block here. Now, where do you want to store the Genesis block? Maybe somewhere in this folder, right? The only problem is for multiple channels, you'll be having multiple Genesis block. So it's better to have a separate folder where you will keep your Genesis block. So maybe we can call that folder as channel artifacts or whatever you want to name it. But since the documentation says channel artifacts, let's go with that. Of course, the name can be anything. So we can create a folder mkdir and we can say channel artifacts. That's it. But then we don't want to create this folder every time, right? We want to create this folder only when the folder is not available. So this is where you will check. Why I have to type everything, right? Let me just copy paste the code. So we'll not be creating this folder every time. We'll be doing this only when the folder is not available. So we'll check if the directory is not there. So you can see not there. In this case, create the folder. Otherwise, don't create the folder. Okay, what next? Now it's time to create the Genesis block. Now I can write the entire script for Genesis block here, or I can create a function called create Genesis block. Now this is a function where I will be getting a Genesis block, and of course we have to call this function as well. So let's call this function here. So I will say call the function, right? So you have to also call the function. Now, how do we create a Genesis block? What is a command to do that? Now, basically to do that, we have a special command which we are going to use. Let me just fetch that command here. Now, this is basically a command which you're going to use, which is config txgen. And you can see it says config txgen command allows the user to create and inspect channel configuration related artifacts. One of them is Genesis block and anything else. And the only thing is this command needs a configuration file called config.tx.yaml file. Oh, that means we have to create this file as well. Okay, we'll do that. And then this command, it has no subcommand as I just mentioned, but we have certain flags to use. So we have so many flags here. Don't worry about everything. We'll be using channel ID because we have to mention channel name. We will be using output block for the path. Of course, right? It will create a Genesis block for us, a block. It's an output folder. I will keep that in output in some folder. And we have to also mention the profile. Now we'll understand this profile when I show you the code, but as of now, these three things we are going to use. And that's it. So let's use this. Let me just minimize the screen or window and let's do that. So basically the thing is config tx gen. That's the command we are going to use. But then it needs the configuration file, right? We have to specify the profile. We have to specify the output block. We have to also specify the channel ID. Okay, but where do we do that? Where do you have the profiles? And for that, we need to create a config file. In fact, for that, what I will do is I will copy a particular folder and paste it here. Now, this is a predefined code. I don't want to type this everything. So this is a config file you're going to use. Config tx.yaml. Now I know it looks a very big file, but it's very simple actually to understand. Let's start. Maybe let's not explain everything in this video. Let's try to understand the basics of it. So basically we want a profile. Now this profile is for three things: for the channel, for the orders, and for the application, right? So basically we have to set default values for the channel, for the order defaults and application. Now let's start with the channel. So if you look at so basically, whenever you get this star, it basically means it is referring to something. So you can see it is referring to channel defaults. Now for the channel defaults, we have to set the policies for it. For the readers, for the writers, for the admins. Readers who will fetch data, writers who will write data, and admins who will administrate the entire network or the channel. Right. So with readers who will fetch data, writers who will write data, right? So basically for this, we have to specify the policies. We'll talk about what is implicit meta, what is signature later. So basically there are two types. One is signature and one is implicit meta. We'll see that later. So those are the things we have to specify the channel defaults. If you want to add more configuration, you can use this file. Example, if you look at the organization, you can see we have two organizations defined here. But if you want to add more organization, you can just simply say enter and add more organization. Of course, you can just copy paste the entire code and say org3 and it will work. Okay, but then let's go step by step again. Now for that, we have to also specify order default and application defaults. Now, so if you look at order default, the order type is etcd draft. So basically the type of gossip protocol they're going to use is raft here. We can also use Kafka and there's one more which is Solo, but then they both are deprecated. So we'll be using Raft, and this is the address and this is the configuration for the etcd Raft, right? Again, we'll see this later how exactly we have to define that. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of policies, but we have to do that, right? For the order, we can mention the policies. You can see we have different policies for different organization, and we have for application as well. So this file is for the profiles and the policies. That's it. So let's close this. This is the file it is going to use, right? Okay. But then how it is able to find that file, right? You have to specify where that file is. So we are making sure that this file is there in config tx. And for that, we have to set one particular variable, which is fabric. So it is fabric cfg config path. And then let's specify where you will get that folder. So you will get that folder in present working directory, pwd/config tx. That's it. I hope it will be able to find it. Anyway, so this is the thing we have to specify, right? Config tx, and we can create a Genesis block. Now, what are the things you have to mention? So we have to mention, so instead of typing everything, let me just copy it. So basically you have to specify the profile, right? But which profile we have to use? So if you go back to your config tx, the profile name is to organization application Genesis. Of course, you can change this name, but by default, this is to orgs application Genesis. We'll be using that particular name for the profile. So let me just copy that particular path. So to specify profile and the profile name. The next thing you have to mention is the output block, where exactly you want your output block to be, right? Where do you specify the output block? Now, where do you want it? Of course, we have a special folder created, right? Which is the create, which is a channel artifact. So we'll be using that. So let me just type the thing here. So this is the thing, right? Channel artifacts and the channel name .block. So if your channel name is my channel, it will be my channel.block. If your channel name is channel 1, it will be channel 1.block, right? So two things you have to specify, profile and output block. But there's one more. which is your channel ID itself. So let's set the channel ID here. The channel ID is your channel name, so we'll simply write that. That's it. So three things you have to specify: channel ID, output block, and profile. And by doing this, you got your Genesis block. As simple as that. Now, once you have done with the Genesis block, the next step you have to follow, create a channel, right? So here we'll create another function called create channel. And as you can see, we don't have that function. So let's create one. So we'll say create channel. Okay. And in this, let's create the channel. Maybe it will be multiple steps. Let's try. Now, when you create a channel, there are multiple things you have to remember. The first thing is to create a channel, we will be using another command, which is called OSN admin. So OSN is basically order service node. Order service node admin. And this is where you have the option of joining the channel, listing the channel, and removing it. So we are going to use this, right? Okay, but these are the subcommands for the OSDN admin channel. And anything else? Yeah, so we have to use certain options to achieve that, right? So we'll be using this option. Basically, we'll be using the channel ID, the order address. Yeah, we're going to use this for the joining. Let's try. Okay, so basically we'll be using this thing, right? So we'll see how do we use that. So even before we do that, the OSDN, it will need certain things. In fact, let's try what happens when you do that. So let me just try to execute the command as well, and I will explain the line. Now, since we are used to the lines, let's try that. So this OSN admin channel join, it takes the channel ID, so we have to specify channel ID. It takes the config block. So this is your Genesis block which we have created. So we have to specify the Genesis block, and you can see we have done that here. And then it says the order address. The order address is this, which is the localhost 7053, the order address. And then we have to also specify the CA file, which is the certificates and the keys for the order CA, and for TSL as well. If you want to communicate over TSL, we have to also specify the primary key. Okay, we have specified all those things, but unfortunately, these are variables, right? And we have not defined those variables. So where do we do that? Now we can use all those things. In fact, instead of typing all those things, we can just copy paste, right? So instead of pushing all these environment variables here, you can see we have all the variables, not environment variables, but the variables where you have all the path. There might be some extra variables which you want to use it, right? So instead of putting it here, it's a good idea to create a separate file, and we'll name that file as envvar. So let me just copy that. It's already there. So this is the file I'm talking about. It has all the paths. You can see we have the path here, and based on what type of path you want to set, if it is for the global, so you can set all the paths here, right, based on which organization you want to work with. So if there's a first organization, set this path. For the second organization, set this path. But what if you want to access them with the help of CLI? In that case, you will be using the peer address, because by default the peer address is localhost, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, so if it is set defaults, it is localhost, but if you want to use it from the CLI, we will be using the different address. That's it. This file is basically deals with the addresses. And if you want to use the environment variables in any of your file, you know what to do, right? You just need to import. So just need to import that file here. So we'll say scripts/envvar.sh. Is that the file name? Yeah, that's right. And that's it. It will give you all the variables. Simple stuff, right? Okay, now there's one more thing. Now, since in this environment variables, you can see we have to call this set globals to set the values. So even before you do this, you have to call that, which is set globals, and you specify you're doing it for which organization. So doing it for one. So the first organization is taking care of creating the channel, and now we can just simply execute this one, and I hope this will work. But then you can see the output we are storing in log.tx. So we can also print the log.tx here. So that's it. This will create a channel for us. And will this work? Let's try. So let's go back here and init the network. So we'll say init.sh up, and it's trying to create the network, and that's done. The next step is we have to create the channel. So I will say create channel, maybe we can name it as C1, channel 1. Oh, and it says permission denied. So I have to set the permissions for that as well. So chmod 755 scripts /create channel.sh. And now let's run this. Oh, okay. Something went wrong. Is it the error? I love errors because that's where you will learn a lot of stuff. It says loading configuration, unable to open the config file. Okay, which config file it is searching? Error reading the configuration, no such file directory. Okay, unfortunately, it's not specifying which file. I was expecting it will throw the file name as well, but it is not specifying the file name. If you have seen this, maybe I'm not able to find the channel name if you, or not the file name. If you can see the file name, let me know in the chat window or the comment section. I can't see it. Anyway, but I know which file is actually missing. The file is, when you want to work with this, you need two more files. One is the configuration for the orderer and one is the configuration for the peer. So basically with the configuration, we also need two more files. As I mentioned, one is code and one is orderer. Now, when you see this orderer, it specifies how do you connect to a particular orderer and what is the time to live for the orderer, at what point orderer will send signals to the peer. So basically, in the network, the orderer keeps sending signals to the peers, right? And also peer among themselves. We have a leader peer, we have a follower peers. So leader peer will send the signal to the follower peer that I'm alive. What if a leader peer dies? In this case, there will be election among the followers and they will be having a new leader. So all these things you have to mention in this two configuration file, one for the orderer and one for the peers. Now, these are all the basic value. Okay, these are all default values. So I would recommend you to just look at these things. It's not that difficult and we'll see this one by one later. As of now, these are all default values. But what if you want to change something? Let's say I want to change something from this general TLS enabled. It is false, I want to make it true. So you can do that in the environment variable as well. So if you want to change something here, you can see this is the thing they are using. So code means here file name. This is code, the code YAML file. In code YAML file, there's a peer and so we have TLS. So you can see if I go back, we have in peer, we have TLS. It should be somewhere down. We have TLS and in TLS, after TLS, we have enabled. By default it's false and we are making it true. That's how you change a particular value with the help of variables. Simple stuff, right? I know it's not simple, but once you do this multiple times, you will get used to it. So, okay. But one thing we can talk about it, we have different types of blockchain certificates given. In fact, we can talk about this in detail later, but we can use software version, we can use hardware version. Here we are using software version. Then we have, I think important as of now. The remaining thing we'll say later. Okay, come back to this create channel. So we got that particular two files and now let's try to do this once again. Let's try to create a channel and again we got an error. Am I using the right path? So I tried this and it is working. So basically you have to set the Fabric CFG path as well in the init.cs. So basically when you export it here, it will be used everywhere. So the problem was it was not able to find the files, right? And now after setting this path, I think it will work. So it is init.sh, again will up the network and okay, it's already running. And now it's time to create the channel. So I will say create channel and we'll say C1, enter. Now you can see it did certain things. So I did two things before running this code. The first thing is we have to set that path. And also I did one more change here, which is, when you try to use this, it might not work in the first go. So what we'll do is we'll try to do this multiple times. And that's why remember we have tried this multiple times, right? We have maximum try, we'll try it for 5 times. So basically we are applying a loop here and we'll execute this and we'll try it for 5 times. And when you try it for multiple times, it might work at least once. So that's the thing. Of course, if it's not working for 5 times, you will get error. Okay, since in the break, I already created that channel with C1. Let me try with C2. So let me go to the log. Okay, now we are getting a log. So you can see at least we got C2, not an issue with that. And we also got a log. Log says cannot join or fail to determine the cluster membership for join. So there's a certificate issue. Why this certificate issue? Okay, so I did 2 things here. The first one is in the init.sh as well, I'm exporting this variable. Maybe it is not able to find a file from here as well. So that one change I'm making. And second, in the create channel, instead of doing it once, we are using a loop, we are trying multiple times. What if it is not happening in the first go, right? And I tried to run this and I was able to create these two blocks, but let me just try this once again with you. Okay, so you can see channel artifacts are empty. And now before we do anything, let me just down the network and then we'll up the network. And now let's try to create the channel with channel 1. And okay, it is trying to create a channel and output says, okay, channel created. You can see we got a name C1. We got the status active, height 1, because that's the first block, the Genesis block. And where you will get the block, this is where you got the block, which is c1.block. Okay, of course you can't read it because it's in block format. There's a way you can actually see that in a JSON format using some translator, but we'll see that translator later. But now we were able to create a channel. The next step would be to join these peers to the channel, right? Okay, so once we have done with the create channel, it's time to add the peers to the channel, right? So basically we have done with the Genesis, we are done with the create, and now it's time for join. Now how do we do it? It's very simple actually. You just need to, once you have created this channel, you just need to call a function called join channel. Of course we don't have a function yet, so we'll create the function. Now the only thing is you need to add two channels, right? I mean, you have to add two organizations to a channel. In this case, I will say join channel 2 times and I will pass the numbers. Add 1, add 2, right? So you will create channel 1. I mean, you will create channel once, but then you will join the channel 2 times for 2 different organizations. Now, if you want to achieve that, of course, you need to create the function called join channel, right? So let me just do that. So that's your function join channel. And here we will be first fetching the organization which you are passing, right? So you're passing 1 or 2. So we'll be doing that. And also I will set the global variables, which we have already defined in the environment variables, right? This function. So what I will do is I will paste these 2 lines. So what we are doing here is we are first setting the organization which you are passing. So example, here we are passing 1. So when you call this join channel for the first time, it will be the org value will be 1, and when you call this join channel second time, the org value will be 2. Simple, right? And for that particular organization 1 and 2, it will assign the values. Now once you have those 2 values, now let's try to add the peer to the channel. Now it is possible that it may fail at the first instance, so we'll be using a loop. So let me use a loop here. And this is the loop, the while loop, and here I would say done. Okay, so basically so we are applying a loop from counter, and we are using counter. We are specifying the maximum retry, and yeah, so every time you do this, you just need to pass a command to do that, right? So what is a command here? So if you go to peer channel, let me just show you the documentation for that. So there is another command called peer channel. You will find all this thing in the command reference. This is the documentation. I will try to put this link in description. And yeah, so this is the peer channel command which you are going to use. And here you have to mention what you want to achieve. So we are trying to basically join the network, right? Or join the channel. So we'll be using join subcommand. And the option we are going to use is only one, which is for the block. So this is for the channel, this is for fetch, this is for join. So in this join, we just have to use one, which is B, and we'll specify the block path. Right now, this block path is basically your Genesis file, right? So we'll add that. So go back up. Okay. And now let me just perform that command. So I will say peer channel join, and B, now we have to specify the file, the Genesis file, right? Now it's in a path, right? It's a lengthy path. So what I will do, I will use a variable here itself, and let me define the variable as block file equal to, let me just copy paste it here. So this is a path, right? So you will find the block in the channel artifacts, and here I can simply use the variable block file, and that's it. And whatever output I get, I just want to save that in log.txt. That's it. This is where you are trying to add a channel to the trying to add a peer to the channel. And then for this loop we also need a counter, right? So this is a counter. It will check the response. If it is uh, correct, it will just exit at this point, right? Okay. And I think it will be joining the peers as well now. I don't think anything is remaining. Let's try. So again, we'll do step again. We'll say down the network. We have to also add some code to delete this artifacts as well. I'm not sure this will delete the artifact. Oh, gone. Artifacts are gone. Great. And let's up the network. Let's create channel. Okay, something is happening. So channel creation done. You can see we got Genesis block, and I hope it will also submit for the channel join. You can see that it has also joined the channel. That's great. Let me just check the log txt once. Okay, nothing saved here. Okay, we'll figure out later why this one failed. But at least you can see it is now joined, because earlier time when we ran this, it was only creating the Genesis block and there was no command for joining channel. But this time you can see there's a proposal submit and they have joined the channel. Can we really see it somewhere? So there's a command using which you can actually see the data about this channel. So let's try to get that in next video. How do we get that? Or in the upcoming videos. Okay, great. And so once we are done with this, this is the join channel. So that's it from this.